All right. So we start off in Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 3. And Abram's wife probably heard that God's going to bless you and a child's going to come from your body. The only problem is it's not happening from my body because God has not allowed me to have a child. And you can feel the pain there. You want to have a child. You've been waiting for a while. Abraham left that region when he left to go to Canaan when he was 75 years old. And at the end of the story, how long does it say? He had lived in this land for 10 years. So 10 years, Sarah's like, where's my child? Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I got to figure out a different way. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because Sarai has 2 trees. Like, this is the tree Abram said, you know what, just trust God, let him take care of it. But there was something about Sarah that said, you know what, I want to have control. Because I can't bank on God allowing me to have a child. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt that way at times? You're like, I can't trust God. I can't bank on him for doing this. It's a real story. It's a real reality. And sometimes, as Christians, we can kind of come across like, I've never done that. Not me. I'm too spiritual. But God brings us testing trees. Every one of us, he brings testing trees. And it looks different for everybody else. But this is what God wants me to do. But this sounds more logical. This sounds more reasonable, right? It sounds like a better plan. And so Sarai was barren. It's something that before she even went to Canaan, in the land of the Ur and the Chaldeans, she was barren. This is my lot in life. I'm not going to have a child. And she says that God's the one that's at fault. Since the Lord, and anytime you see the word Lord capitalized, it's Yahweh. Since Yahweh has prevented me from bearing children, this is what I want you to do, honey. I want you to go into my slave. And perhaps through her, I can build a family. And Abram agreed to what Sarah said. Sad. Sad, but understandable, particularly if you live in that culture. Because that's what that culture did. If a woman who was in charge, if she was unable to have a child, she would basically have a slave woman marry her husband or else a concubine. And the idea is that she's going to have a baby for me. She's going to be like a surrogate mother for me. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that Hagar has absolutely no say in this. She has to do it. She has to marry him. She has to have him sleep with her. And the goal is, she knows in advance, it's to have a child. Like, that is what her lot is. And so you got this dynamic that's starting to form here. I was reading an illustration about like a hamster that's trapped in the cage. And what does the hamster want to do? It wants to get out, right? And what happens when the hamster gets out? He doesn't realize there's a house dog outside. And it's like, that's what it is like when you make plans with God. Like when you say, God, your plan it needs a little bit of adjustment on my part. And that's how we are sometimes. We think, my plan is better. I got to get out of this cage. For Sarai, it's like nothing is working. Nothing is happening here. Yeah, God talked to Abraham and God made this covenant with him, but it must be because it comes from his body, but not my body. And what happens here is that you are doubting the very character of God. Do you think God wanted Abraham to sleep with his wife's maidservant? Do you think God, when he said you're going to have a child, he had Sarai in mind? Yes, he had Sarai in mind. Sarai is the one that's going to have the child. But she reasoned, this can't happen. And so you go on from there, and it says that Abraham took Hagar, the Egyptian slave, gave her to her husband as a wife for him. And this happened after Abram had lived in Canaan for 10 years. So again, you see Sarai who's taking control of the situation. She doesn't like what's happening there, right? And so why would Sarai do this? What would lead her to do that? I mean, there are key reasons, right? Number one is impatience. She has been waiting at least 10 years in the land of Canaan. We don't know how many years she was married to Abram before, but I imagine it was a long time. And so she was patient enough to possibly feel embarrassed. Why am I holding out this hope? Cultural pressure, again, that was something they did in the Near East. They did that. And, your lot for a woman was the children that you had. That was your thing. She wanted to take control. She wanted to take control and go from there. So, it's a sad story, but it's a real story. Would you agree? This is a real story that we get impatient, that sometimes we want to take control, sometimes we want to come up with our own shortcut. And when you do that, you're going to find out that it looks even worse today than it did before.
God needs our help, right?
Yeah, that's what we think. We think God needs our help, right? It's interesting. So this is the theme in the Bible. Okay, so you go back to the garden. God promised, the woman, that be fruitful, multiply, If you eat from this tree, you'll die, but if you eat from this tree right here, you'll live. Boy, that tree looks really good. And it's also helpful for me to gain knowledge. And what did that do? It set her life back and it turned into a disaster, right? There was a house dog outside the cage. Sin entered the world. Death entered into the world. It's just a disaster, choosing that. Later on, Cain had a choice. When it came to Abel, God said, why are you so downcast? Sin wants to master you. It wants to control you. Do what is right. And so he had a reason again. And he said, I don't like my brother, so he killed him. And what was the repercussions because of that? Now he was exiled from Eden. Now he was to be a wanderer away from God's presence. Like decisions we make all the time, they just complicate things. Then you have this whole Tower of Babel incident before Abram. It's like you have a bunch of people that God said, I want you to scatter and multiply and be fruitful. And they said, we don't want to scatter. We want to stay together as a group. We want to build this tower because we want to make a name for ourselves. And what was the consequences of that? God confused the languages, right? And today, we bear the painful reality of that when we see the conflict and wars and things that are going on. But again, it's our choices. What kind of choices are we going to make? And for Sarai, this choice was going to cause all kinds of strife, and it was something that was going to be part of their life from now on. Okay. So number 2, Hagar actually has a change in status, by the way. She was a slave, right, a maiden woman. But it says right here, because she became his wife. So there's a change of status right there. So he slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant, and she saw that she was pregnant. her mistress became contemptible to her. Then Sarai said to Abram, You, Dave Ramsire, are responsible for my suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and when she saw that she was pregnant, I become contemptible to her. May the Lord judge between me and you. So what does Abram do? He replies to Sarai, Here, your slave is in your own power. Do whatever you want with her. And Sarai mistreated her so much that she ran away from her. Again, you see the consequences of some of these decisions that we try to make without God. We try to take a shortcut. Things just don't turn out well. But the interesting thing here is that Hagar starts to look at Sarai with contempt. And why is that? It's possible is because she was pregnant, and it's something that her I don't know what you call it, her maidservant, or not maidservant, but her superior, something that she couldn't do. Maybe she had this sense of, I feel better now, and I can have a child, and you can't have a child. Maybe she didn't like Sarai's scheme. I didn't have any say in this matter, but you made me do it. And you know what? I don't want to give you my child. I want that child. The interesting thing about Hagar, which by the way, the word Hagar, the name Hagar, literally means means the, and Hagar means immigrant. The immigrant. That's what her name means. And let me ask you a question. Where did she come from? She came from Egypt. And what led to that? It was a decision by Abram. Decision by Abram. He said, you know what? We're in Egypt. It's a famine. Sarai, tell me you're my half-sister so that you can marry someone and then we can just get a bunch of stuff back in return and then we can escape. The problem was that the person that wanted to marry her was the Pharaoh. And so, but God intervened with that bad decision. Why? Because God made a promise. And when we blow it, his promises are still in effect. So God makes a promise. Pharaoh said, why didn't you tell me that was your wife? Get out of here. And you could take some slaves and some donkeys and some camels. Who was one of those slaves? Hagar. And can you see the irony here? She is there because Abram wanted to give his wife to someone. And now Sarai gives her to Abram. Can you see the irony there? It's like what comes around goes around. And again, this is all things that are caused by decisions. It's the chain reactions of these decisions right there. And Sarai's response is interesting, isn't it? Is it familiar? Is this a familiar theme, by the way? Think about when Adam and Eve were in the garden. God walks up and he says, "Oh, Adam, where are you?" And then he says, "Well, I was afraid to see you because I'm naked." "Did you eat from the tree?" What does he say? He says, "The woman that you made gave me some and I took." Taking away the responsibility, right? That carries on down. Carries on down. And so why is she doing that? Because it's painful. It's painful to see your scheme backfire when she has the thing that you can't have, and that's a child. And so she shifts responsibility. She plays the blame game. Abram, it's your fault. And to be fair, Abram isn't innocent in this whole matter because he's what's known as a passive husband. It was Sarah's plan initially. Hey, I want you to go into my maidservant and have a child for me. Sounds good to me. Do you see what I'm saying? And so Sarah's response here is of frustration, not just because maidservant is having a child, but her husband is just letting it stand there. Like, for example, why isn't Abram going up to Hagar and saying, knock this off? This is my wife. You cannot show contempt to her. Why isn't Abram doing that? Is Abram just like, okay, this is your plan, I'll go ahead and do it? Sure. Why doesn't he tell her beforehand, you know what, I just had a covenant with God. He's going to bring us a child. We just have to trust him. He could have been a spiritual leader, but he was a passive husband. And then here, when she says, now my servant sees me as, contemptible, what does he do? He doesn't take care of the situation, but he simply says, you know what, she's your maidservant. Do to her whatever you want to do. It's not my fault. You're the one that had come up with the plan. But do you see that Abram was involved in this situation as well? And it's all part of the testing tree. Abram had a choice. He could have said, you know what, Sarai, that is not a good plan. This is not what this covenant was about with God. We just got to trust him more. And so, passive husbands, especially like in the Christian faith or just the faith in general, we need spiritual leaders. We need people who stand up and protect our spouse. And so that's one of the reasons why I think that she's really just putting the blame on Abram, because it's like, now she's showing contempt for me. And the sad part of this reality is once Abram gives her permission to do what she wants to do, what does she do? She mistreats Hagar. And what is Hagar's response? She runs away from her. Decisions we make, shortcuts that we take, affect other people. Affect other people. All right. I was going to say something else, but I want to just go on and move here, because here's the thing. God has not been mentioned yet. It's just been human wisdom and understanding. And this is a chaotic event. And so God comes into the picture now. God comes into the picture. Just so you can see this right here on this map, Haran, with the big black house right there, the tent, that's where Abram was, and that's where Hagar was, the immigrant. And she flees past the Negev to the Sin, to the way of Shur. And there's going to be a well there called Beer Lahai Roi. And that's going to be this place where she has an encounter, a divine encounter. The mysterious angel of the Lord. So it says here, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring in the wilderness. The spring on the way to Shur. He said, Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going? She replied, I'm running away from my mistress Sarai. And the angel of the Lord said to her, go back to your mistress and submit to her authority. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds really harsh. But let's walk through this together, shall we? And when we walk through this together, let's put on a Near East perspective, not a Western perspective. It's important. So the first thing I want to talk about is, who is the angel and the Lord? This mysterious figure comes up over and over again in the Old Testament. And so some people think this is a created angel who is just a messenger of God, kind of like Gabriel. Gabriel told Mary that she's going to have a son. So that's one view. The second view is that it's Yahweh himself in a physical form, or what appears to be a physical form. It's a temporary manifestation of God known as a theophany. Others say this is the pre-incarnate Christ. And there's a little bit of merit to that. Why? It's by addition by subtraction. In the Old Testament, there's the angel of the Lord. But in the New Testament, there's no angel of the Lord. Instead, there's somebody named Jesus, who we recognize as God in the flesh. So there's a conundrum there. How come he's not in the New Testament, but he's in the Old Testament? Okay? So those are the three views basically about who that is. And the first thing we understand about this angel here is he asks a question. And the question that he asks is, where have you come from and where are you going? Do you know that if you trace so far where we've come from, God asks questions. And some of these questions we think like, does God not know the answer to that question? Let's go to the garden. He's looking for Adam. He says, Adam, where are you? Do you think that God knows where Adam is? So why does he ask that question? It's because he's not asking about his physical location. He's asking about his spiritual condition. Where are you at? Where are you at right now? Well, I hid from you because I was naked and ashamed. What? Have you eaten from the tree of life? Well, it was the woman you made, it was her fault. See, when God asks a question, he's asking a question because he wants to hear something from you. And so what did he want to hear from Adam? Yes, Lord, I did eat from the tree of life, and I feel so ashamed right now that I'm covering myself in fig leaves. See, God can work with that. And sometimes we just have to confess. Like in relationships with people, you know. Sometimes we hold on to these grudges forever, and really the entrance to reconciliation often comes through somebody saying, you know what? It's my fault. I contributed to this. So the second time he asks the question is when he comes to Cain. And he says, where is your brother Abel? Do you think God knows where Abel is? Well, just before he asked the question, we find out that Abel's blood cried out from the ground to him. He knows what happened. But again, he's given Cain an opportunity to answer that question in a way where Cain says, my anger got the best of me. But you know what he says? In defiance, am I my brother's keeper? God can work with people when they confess. It's like a parent, right? We used to tell our kids when they were little, and we asked them if they did something, and they would say no, and then we would preface it like saying, the consequences will be less if you just confess that you've done something. There will be harsher if you don't, and we prove it that you did. And so God asks a lot of questions. Like even Jesus asks questions. Jesus sees somebody that is a beggar and needs healing, and Jesus comes up to him and says, do you want to be healed? Jesus, what kind of question is that? No. Jesus knew that he wanted to be healed, but did he know what healing would mean for the rest of his life? It would mean that you can't go begging anymore for money. It would mean that you have to get a job and you have to do some work. It would mean that you couldn't beg for people. You have to support your own self. And so Jesus says, do you really want to get well? And really, it's the same in the homeless community a lot of times. It's like they'll say, you know what, I want to get a place. I want to get out of this homeless situation, this condition I'm in. But if Jesus was there, he said, do you really want to change? A lot of homeless people, they're satisfied where they are in their predicament. And so God asks questions like this a lot. But it's not because he doesn't know the answer, because he wants you to say the right answer. And then as you continue the story, he tells Hagar, go back to your mistress and submit to her authority. Now, is God excusing Sarai's mistreatment of Hagar? No. Why would he say go back to Sarai? It's because she's going to have a promise coming to her. And she's going to have to make sure that she is protected, she is fed, she is nourished. And so the only place that could happen is if she goes back to Sarai. And in the process, the hope is that they will be able to walk it through, to talk it out. The hope of it is that there be some kind of reconciliation. And so, in that culture, Hagar's alone. There's no welfare. There's no special program for single mothers. She's in the wilderness. She's in the desert. And so God has a plan for her. But in order for this plan to come to fruition, she has to go back. Does that make sense? It's like, it's not because she wants her to get, angel of the Lord wants her to continue to get harmed by Sarai. But it's like, I got something for you I'm going to share. It's going to be very important for you. So what does he share? the angel of Yahweh, because that's what that means, the angel of Yahweh said to her, hey, I know you're feeling down, but I will greatly multiply your offspring, and they will be too many to count. You know, God had never said that to one of the patriarch's wives. A lot of times they had trouble having a child. But God sees the immigrant. God sees the person who is despondent and really has no other alternative. God sees the outcast. God sees the person that's on the margins. And he says, I will greatly multiply your offspring. I have a plan for you. And they will be too many to count. And the angel of the Lord said to her, you have conceived, you're pregnant right now, and you will have a son, and you will name him Ishmael. But why Ishmael? For Yahweh has heard your cry of affliction. Ishmael means God hears. God hears. It's really a beautiful conversation if you're following this conversation. There's so much complexity here. It's a story that we've read many times, but there are levels, there are multiple levels that are taking place here. And then he describes what kind of man Ishmael is going to be. This man will be like a wild donkey. His hand will go against everyone, and everyone's hand will go against him, and he will settle near all of his relatives. So let's ask the question again, is this a created angel? Would a created angel say, I will greatly multiply your offspring? And there will be too many to count? Is that something that a created angel would say? No, that's something that Yahweh would say, right? It's something God would say. And then he goes on, he says, this is what kind of person it's going to be. He's going to be like a wild donkey. For those of you who aren't familiar with wild donkeys, they are found in the desert regions. And they are independent. They run away because they don't want anything to hold them in. And so in a way what's happening here is the angel of the Lord is saying, you're going to be free. Your son's going to be free. He's not going to be caged up like you are. He's not going to be a slave, but he's going to be a wild donkey. But there's going to be conflict that's going to happen. There's going to be, somebody's hand against him and his hand against his other hand. But he will settle with his relatives, like he will be okay. You are in a situation where you don't know what's going to happen to you. I'm telling you, you're going to have a child. He will be okay. You will have multiple offspring. You'll have a community of people. Now, the interesting thing is that according to the Quran and according to Muslims, Ishmael is their spokesperson, the origin, if you will. So in the Quran, it says that instead of Abraham sacrificing Isaac at Mount Moriah, that he was actually sacrificing Ishmael. Okay? And in the Quran, it talks about that Abram, he takes Hagar and Ishmael to Mecca, and he starts this thing that leads to ultimately the pilgrimage of Mecca. Now, of course, the Hebrew Bible, which is far older than the Quran, has always stated that this is about Isaac as the promised child, and not Ishmael. So, according to the research, it is true that Hagar and Ishmael actually led to the Arab people. And the Muslims claim them. And we can sit here and we can say, well, how did he get in the picture anyway? Well, go back to Egypt. Go back to these decisions that were made. Let me sell my wife. But my beef is not with Muslims. My beef is to say that that's what, according to the records, when we talk about a wild donkey whose hand will be against you and their hand will be against you, it seems like a familiar pattern when we think about all the conflict that goes back and forth. And they're free. So he says it's going to be like a wild donkey. And then the story ends here where Hagar gives God a name. So she named the Lord, and who does she say that this is talking to her? Is it just an angel? No, it says Yahweh. So she named Yahweh, who spoke to her, "You are El Roy." For she said, "In this place, you are the God who sees me." Pause. Did God know where she was when he said, "Where are you going? Where do you come from?" Why? Because God saw her. And not only that, God found her. And not only that, God promised her, "I'm going to bless you because you're more than an immigrant to me. You're going to be the mother of multitudes." And you know why? Because she's the wife of Abram now. And what does it say in the scripture? People will be blessed through who? Through Abram. And so that well is known as, and the first part of that is bear. Say bear. Bear and say Lahai. Bear Lahai Roy. Bear Lahai Roy. And it's between Kadesh and Barnea. So Hagar gave birth to Abram's son, and Abram named his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. What does Ishmael mean? God hears. So here you have God sees, and you have God hears. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. What a story. What a story this is. And Ishmael will be in the Bible some more. When they bury Abram, Ishmael will be in the story. But everything that we know about Ishmael is he turned out to be a good guy. But he's the God that sees you and hears you. And isn't that what Jesus did? Jesus goes up to the adulteress, the tax collector, the person that has leprosy. He goes up to the woman that was caught in the act of adultery, the woman that has had 5 husbands and now the one that she's with is no longer hers. Jesus, Yahweh, it's not about status. He holds every single person, no matter what their status is in life, as someone that is worth seeing and someone that is worth listening to. And he responds to the cry of the widow and the orphan. It's the character of God. And so who do I think the angel of the Lord is? I think it's the pre-incarnate Christ. Because in the New Testament, He comes in physical form. And he does everything that the angel of Yahweh was doing here. Listens to the cry of the people. So, I want to read this passage and we're done. The Spirit of the Lord is on me. This is from Isaiah, and Jesus quotes this in John 4. The Spirit of the Lord God is on me because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and freedom to the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of our God's vengeance, to comfort all who mourn. It's an amazing God that we serve. It's really a phenomenal God that we serve. And so right now, I'm going to go ahead and close in prayer, and then we're going to take communion, and I'll lead us in that. Lord, I just thank you for this story. There's a lot of lessons in it, but I just thank you for your character, Lord. I praise you and give you thanks. In Jesus' name, amen.